Sometimes, all the success and money in the world isn't enough to keep a relationship healthy. Many of the best player-coach duos in NFL history didn't last as long as they should have because egos simply got in the way. Different personalities, styles, and approaches to the game have led to some ugly breakups over the years. So, here are 12 infamous NFL feuds between coaches and players that caught us all by surprise. Number 12, Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins. You usually don't hear stories about consistent playoff teams trading away a franchise player in their prime. But Houston Texans head coach Bill O'Brien loves making trades that nobody else understands. In the 2020 offseason, he traded away Pro Bowl and three-time first-team All-Pro wideout DeAndre Hopkins to the Arizona Cardinals. Nobody could figure out why O'Brien was trading away one of the league's best wideouts with 3 bargain years remaining on his contract. O'Brien said that the trade was in the best interest of the Texans, and the former seemingly wasn't happy about Hopkins wanting a new deal. Keep in mind, when Jadeveon Clowney sought a new deal, O'Brien got grumpy and traded him to the Seattle Seahawks for well below market value. Hopkins claimed the stories about he and O'Brien having a rift were blown out of proportion, and that he respected his former coach. But clearly, O'Brien had an issue with his star receiver. Number 11, Brad Childress and Randy Moss. After overstaying his welcome with the New England Patriots, Moss was traded back to the Minnesota Vikings in the 2010 season. But Moss's second go-around in the Gopher State was a downright disaster due to a toxic relationship with head coach Brad Childress. Less than a month after the Vikings reacquired Moss, Childress informed his players that Moss would be waived, but the Pro Bowl wideout wouldn't go down with ease, informing ownership that Childress should be fired and that he wasn't suitable to be a coach. Moss was waived and claimed by the Tennessee Titans. Childress was fired after 10 games. Childress later went on to say that the Vikings had a good locker room, but Moss vomited on it. Yikes. Number 10, Dan Reeves and John Elway. Reeves served as a head coach of the Denver Broncos from 1981 to 92. He and John Elway, whom the Broncos acquired via trade with the Baltimore Colts at the 1983 draft, had a tremendous success together. They reached the Super Bowl 3 times in the 80s, and though Denver lost every single one of them, they seemed like they were getting close to winning the big one. But their different personalities and styles simply didn't work well together, and Reeves acknowledged that the two men just didn't have any patience with one another. Things got even more heated when Reeves fired Mike Shanahan, Elway's well-respected offensive coordinator, and they continued to worsen when Elway reportedly claimed that the Broncos players found Reeves to be aloof, which shocked the Denver coach. Owner Pat Bowlen eventually sided with his QB and fired Reeves after the 1992 campaign. Shanahan was brought back to Denver as their new head coach in 1995. He and John Elway guided the team to consecutive Super Bowl championships in the 1997 and 1998 seasons. Coincidentally, their Super Bowl 33 title game came against the Reeves-coached Atlanta Falcons. That was some sweet revenge for both Shanahan and Elway. Number 9, Tom Coughlin and Tiki Barber. When Tom Coughlin joined the New York Giants as their new head coach in 2004, he helped Pro Bowl running back Tiki Barber cut back significantly on his fumbling habits. The latter enjoyed his best years under Coughlin, but off the field, the two men simply couldn't stand one another. Barber wasn't afraid to publicly criticize his coach, and it got so ugly to the point where he walked away from the game after the 06 season, 1 year before the G-Men upset the Patriots in Super Bowl 42. Coughlin also refused to do an interview with Barber prior to a Sunday night game in 2008, while the latter was working as a reporter with NBC. Barber has suggested that he tried to make amends with Coughlin, but the former head coach doesn't feel the same way. Are you surprised? Look at how many bridges Coughlin burned during his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He may have won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants, but he clearly doesn't prioritize making friendships with his players. Number 8, Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. McCarthy was Rodgers' head coach in Green Bay from 2006 up until his abrupt firing in the midst of a disappointing 2018 season. It wasn't all for nothing, however. Rodgers won 2 MVP awards, the Packers won Super Bowl 45, and they reached 3 NFC championship games between the 2010 and 2014 seasons. But the tense relationship between McCarthy and Rodgers led to the former's downfall and firing in 2018. In the 2019 offseason, Bleacher Report detailed an article that summed up their rocky relationship after speaking with former Packers players and personnel. McCarthy was the San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator in 2005 when they drafted Alex Smith first overall instead of Rodgers. Apparently, the latter was bitter towards McCarthy because of that ever since. It was also mentioned that Rodgers had to keep changing plays in-game because he was fed up with McCarthy's refusal to switch things up. It wasn't uncommon to see Rodgers get visibly frustrated with his coach during games either. According to one source in that Bleacher Report story, Rodgers claimed that McCarthy has one of the lowest IQs, if not the lowest IQ of any coach he's ever had. Now that That's harsh. Number 7. John Gruden and Keyshawn Johnson. The 3-time Pro Bowl wideout played a huge role in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl 37 championship. But even renowned players coach John Gruden couldn't handle Johnson's explosive temper. During a Week 3 2002 game against the St. Louis Rams, Johnson made headlines when he was seen screaming at his coach mid-game.
Keyshawn Johnson lashed out at the head coach on national TV.
Gruden's patience with Johnson finally wore out during the 2003 season, and the latter was deactivated for the final 7 games of that season. That's right, he wasn't cut or traded, he was told not to show up anymore. Now that's one way to end a rocky relationship. Number 6. Barry Switzer and Troy Aikman. Hall of Fame coach Jimmy Johnson left the Dallas Cowboys following their 1993 Super Bowl season, following a well-documented feud with Jerry Jones. Former Oklahoma coach Barry Switzer was hired as Johnson's replacement in 1994. He was Troy Aikman's coach in college, so this was a match made in heaven. The Cowboys went on to win the Super Bowl in Switzer's second season at the helm, cementing their dynasty with a 3rd title in 4 years. But the dynasty also ended much sooner than expected, due in large part to Aikman's beef with his coach. There was an instance where Switzer called off a practice after Michael Irvin and other players showed up hungover and sick. Aikman felt like Switzer should have forced them to practice until they puked instead. Switzer apparently thought that Aikman was trying to get him fired, which complicated their relationship. Aikman respected Johnson's strict, uptight style, which kept the team focused. But during Switzer's final years, Aikman openly expressed his frustration with the team's immaturity and lack of preparation. Yep, just another case of egos getting in the way of a dynasty. Number 5. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Only a lengthy rift could split up the greatest head coach quarterback duo in NFL history. For 20 seasons, Brady put up with Belichick's grumpy, no-nonsense style, and the results was NFL records, MVP awards, and annual division titles, and, oh yeah, 6 Super Bowl championships. But eventually, the happy-go-lucky Brady had enough of Belichick's ways, and apparently, Belichick tried trading his franchise star to the San Francisco 49ers at the 2017 deadline. Lucky for Brady, owner Robert Kraft stepped in to veto the trade. That added more tension to the Brady-Belichick feud, however. And in January of 2018, ESPN detailed a story about the power struggle in Foxborough. 1 year after the Pats won their 6th Super Bowl, Brady finally stuck it to Belichick by leaving for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020 free agency. And when he made the announcement official on his Instagram page, Brady posted a message that may or may not have been a shot at his now former coach. If there's one thing I've learned about football, it's that nobody cares what you did last year or the year before that. Dun dun dun. Number 4, Matt Patricia and Darius Slay. This partnership only lasted 2 seasons, and yet it was one of the most toxic player-coach relationships of all time. Patricia was hired as the new head coach of the Detroit Lions in 2018, and it didn't take long for him to grow unpopular among his players. One former player said that the former Patriots assistant was often late to meetings during the 2018 season. None of these players had bigger beef with Patricia than Pro Bowl cornerback Darius Slay. However, that's why the Lions traded him to the Philadelphia Eagles during the 2020 offseason. Slay unloaded on his former coach, saying he didn't respect Patricia as a person while admitting that he was a hard guy to play for. Patricia allegedly ripped Slay in front of the team on one occasion by using a sexual comment. Slay also said that Patricia told him that he shouldn't work out with Richard Sherman or Aqib Talib since he wasn't elite like them. It's safe to say that these two won't be grabbing beers together anytime soon. Number 3, Earl Thomas and Pete Carroll. The Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom was so dominant that we'll forever look back and simply wonder how this team never became a dynasty. Winning 1 Super Bowl just wasn't enough. Of course, it would have been 2 if Pete Carroll would have just ran the ball at the 1. In September 2018, Greg Bishop and Robert Clembo detailed the fall of the Seahawks in the Legion of Boom era, having spoken to a bunch of former players to figure out how the dynasty never came to be. Lots of former players, especially on defense, believed Carroll was too protective of Wilson, but perhaps no former Seahawk has made more beef with Carroll than all-pro safety Earl Thomas. Entering the 2018 season, he was the final player remaining from the Legion of Boom era. In an article for the Players Tribune that year, Thomas told the Seahawks to either offer him a new deal or trade him. The Seahawks never did that, however, and Thomas unfortunately suffered a broken leg during Week 4 of the 2018 season. His contract year was over. And as everyone remembers, a furious Thomas flipped off Carroll in the Seattle sidelines as he was being carted off. That was his final moment as a Seahawk. It was an ugly end to Thomas's wonderful tenure in Seattle, and the Baltimore Ravens signed him a 4-year deal worth $55 million in the 2019 offseason. Number 2, Mike Tomlin and Antonio Brown. For 8 seasons, Antonio Brown was the feel-good underdog story. The 195th pick in the 2010 draft got better and better each year, eventually emerging as a superstar for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2014. He earned 7 Pro Bowls and 4 first-team All-Pro selections. There was no stopping him and Ben Roethlisberger. There was just a little bit of silliness and minor drama on Brown's end. But being the easygoing guy he was, Mike Tomlin just let it be. He didn't want to get into it with Brown, who was helping Pittsburgh win games. But Brown's relationship with Big Ben and the Steelers quickly began to sour in the 2018 season. AB didn't appreciate getting called out by his quarterback, and he basically skipped their Week 17 game after getting into a heated argument with Roethlisberger during a practice, which Brown walked out on. While Brown regularly called out his former teammates and coaches on social media, Tomlin took the high road and tried to steer away any questions regarding his former star receiver. It really is too bad that this once great relationship fell apart out of nowhere. Number 1. Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw. Let this short clip summarize their relationship.
No, listen, I'm saying there's a lot of things. I'm talking to you. I will not talk about him after this interview, okay?
Before Brady Belichick and Joe Montana Bill Walsh, Noll and Bradshaw were the most successful coach-QB tandem in history. It's amazing how much success they had considering how much the two Steelers legends resented one another. Noll was the only head coach Bradshaw had in his 14 NFL seasons. They won 4 Super Bowls together, but Bradshaw just didn't like how hard Noll was on him. It was that simple. Bradshaw just wasn't able to handle his coach's personality, despite all of their accomplishments together. Bradshaw said he needed to be patted on the back, and he hated it when his coach would put his hands on him. The Pittsburgh quarterback said he was a mama's boy who just wanted to have fun out there. Noll, on the other hand, called their relationship business-like. He didn't care if Bradshaw didn't like the way they did things. All that mattered was that it worked. Bradshaw skipped Noll's funeral when he was in Pittsburgh in 2014. After his playing days, Bradshaw refused to talk about the Steelers, even calling Noll a jerk while he was working for CBS. Bradshaw claimed that Noll didn't call to congratulate him on his Hall of Fame induction. And sure, he's praised Noll for everything he did as a coach, but winning just couldn't fix all the cracks in their successful yet complicated working relationship. Well, that's gonna be it for us for today. But what other coach-player feuds in NFL history should we have included on our list? You can let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and hey, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.